The publication of The End of Modernity by Gianni Vattimo sparked a growing interest in Italian philosophy in the United States. To understand Vattimo's endorsement of weak thought, one can turn to his essay titled Toward an Ontology of Decline in the book Recoding Metaphysics, the New Italian Philosophy, published in 1988. Much like post-war French philosophers such as Derrida, Foucault, and Levinas, Vattimo and his peers delve into the works of Nietzsche and Heidegger. Their reception of these thinkers leads them to seek a departure from modernity into postmodernity. Although Vattimo acknowledges the uncertainty of postmodernism's exact location, he firmly believes that modernity is undergoing a crisis and decline and examines this phenomenon in humanism, hermeneutics, art, and anthropology. Vattimo's title, The End of Modernity, should be viewed more as an expression of desire than a definitive proclamation. The collection of essays traces a path through modernity to demonstrate that it ultimately leads to a dead end. Vattimo's journey, mostly within the realm of philosophy, progresses from beyond good and evil to beyond hermeneutics towards postmodernism. He identifies Nietzsche and Heidegger as the two postmodern philosophers who will guide him out of modernity's impasse. Throughout Vattimo's book, themes and language related to imprisonment recur, emphasizing the strong desire for liberation. However, Vattimo stresses that he seeks not to overcome modernity, but rather to profoundly revise and transform it. Vattimo aspires to an active or positive nihilism that offers a chance to move from a purely critical and negative view of the postmodern condition to one that sees it as a positive possibility and opportunity. He argues that to move towards postmodernism, one must not leave behind modernity and metaphysics, but instead come to terms with and deepen one's understanding of them. He interprets Heidegger's concept of Verwandlung as a going beyond that involves both acceptance and deepening, akin to being cured of and resigning to an illness. Vattimo encourages us to experience the deadlock as a Heideggerian event, a moment of resignation that leads to an unusual form of emancipation. At this juncture, we realize that postmodernism is not simply another historical period after modernism, but that modernity signifies the end of history and postmodernity represents a phase beyond history. In line with Lyotard's The Postmodern Condition, Vattimo asserts that the notion of history as a unified process is rapidly eroding. He contends that history for him is nothing more than a narrative or series of narratives, rendering it unsuitable as a basis for legitimation. As history transitions from philosophy of history to a rhetoric of history, it loses credibility. Despite this, Vattimo feels the need to legitimize his discourse on postmodernity, resembling the cultural criticism he wishes to move beyond. He underscores material conditions, intertwining his argument with aspects not strictly tied to metaphysics. Eventually, he begins to make statements reminiscent of Baudrillard's view on a world of simulations and a pervasive alienation, where no one ever really meets anyone else. In these statements, Vattimo speaks as if experiences in the West were uniform, disregarding significant differences between cities like Montreal, Mexico City, and Montevideo. This stance appears contradictory for someone aiming to let go of history while still preserving historicity. The possibility of such a transition is open to question. Vattimo's perspective on postmodernism appears to be somewhat uniform, without explicit acknowledgement of the various movements that constitute postmodernism. For instance, in architectural postmodernism, the goals often run counter to those attributed to postmodernism by Vattimo. Jeng's, for example, emphasizes a complex relationship with the past, aiming for architecture to have a deep connection to history. Although Jeng's also envisions the continuation and transcendence of modernism, Vattimo sees unprepared to navigate the complexities in music, painting, and literature categorized as postmodernism. Even within the realm of postmodernism, there is disagreement on what it involves, making it challenging to expect a uniform understanding. Vattimo's discussion of the westernization of the world assumes a homogeneity in the West. He argues that both hermeneutics and anthropology fail to recognize the impossibility of truly encountering the other. The idea of encountering alterity is an illusion, as alterity has been entirely exhausted in today's mixed reality. In this way, he challenges a powerful aspect of current critical theory, which often emphasizes the importance of understanding and appreciating other cultures. He suggests that even ethnography falls into the same trap as hermeneutics and anthropology, idealizing a constructed notion of the primitive and failing to engage with the world of traces and residues. Vattimo's perspective differs from that of Stanley Cavell, who emphasizes that otherness can be found not only in distant lands but also in our immediate surroundings, within our families, or in the ordinary aspects of life. For Cavell, otherness is an experience inherent in living with fellow human beings, regardless of cultural or geographical distinctions. This view contrasts with Vattimo's project of uncovering modernity's crisis and decline, which in part seeks to transform alterity into a version of Western narcissism. Vattimo predicts a destiny towards exhaustion, echoing Spengler, while Cavell proposes a declining decline through his readings of Wittgenstein, who grounds us in the everyday and the ordinary. The difference between Vattimo and Cavell extends beyond their personal libraries. It touches on their fundamental philosophies. Wittgenstein's approach appears to unsettle Vattimo, as evidenced in Vattimo's criticism of Gadamer, a move that brings Heidegger and Wittgenstein into closer proximity. Vattimo views this development unfavorably, as Wittgenstein's philosophy resists nihilism, while Vattimo argues that recognizing nihilism is our only chance for progress. Vattimo's treatment of Wittgenstein is rather brief, and he critiques Gadamer for what he sees as an endorsement of the existing order. However, it is unlikely that readers will turn to Vattimo for insights into Gadamer. On the other hand, Vattimo demonstrates a seasoned understanding of Heidegger, particularly in his engagement with Heidegger's writings on poetry and language. He delves into the profound connection between death and language, a theme shared by Heidegger and Blonget, especially in Blonget's discussions of Kafka. Vattimo's strength lies in his ability to offer multiple interpretations of Heidegger's expressions, revealing a nuanced understanding. In one instance, Vattimo explores the link between poetry, monumentality, and mortality, highlighting how monuments, like neoclassical art, embody an inherent connection to mortality. They don't seek to conquer time, but rather endure within it. He draws on Heidegger's example of the Greek temple, which gains its significance through the inscriptions of time on its stone surface. This exposure to earthly elements and mortality takes on a positive meaning in the context of art. Additionally, the critical reception of a work of art, shaped by changing interpretations over generations, is tied to both succession and mortality. While monuments symbolize tradition and the past, Vattimo acknowledges that any postmodern philosophy he envisions will be built upon what has come before. He emphasizes that what is passed on down to us enables a specific access to the world. Thus, the end of modernity does not involve the end of tradition. In the concluding pages, Vattimo outlines the potential features of postmodern philosophy. He revisits the term Verwindung, this time translating it as secularization. In this context, secularization, as understood by authors like Max Weber, Norbert Elias, Rene Girard, describes history as a series of events where emancipation is achieved through a radical transformation and distortion of its very essence. However, Vattimo's interpretation may need to grapple with Hans Blumenbach's critique of secularization thesis, particularly in the legitimacy of the modern age. Blumenberg highlights the challenge of conceiving what the secularization of Christian eschatology would entail, suggesting that it would not align with the modern idea of progress. Moreover, Vattimo frequently cites Nietzsche's proclamation of God's death, but he may overlook the Christian tradition's belief in resurrection. The end of modernity prompts us to consider critical issues like the interplay between truth and rhetoric, poetry and philosophy, art and contingency. It also introduces us to key figures in the ongoing discourse on postmodernism. While the book does not advocate for upheaval or revolution to transcend modernity, it calls for patience in acceptance, allowing time to reveal whether its title will indeed be the anticipated proclamation.